And we are joined now in the studio by Elisabeth Kaneza. She is a human rights activist and United Nations Fellow here in Germany. Thank you very much for joining us to share your perspective on this.
For having me.
You're welcome. How important do you think that the UN fact-finding mission is?
The fact-finding mission was very important. It was the first of such mission we had in Germany, actually targeting really the human rights situation of people of African descent in Germany. It gave a platform for the first time for human rights activists and also civil society to report about the experiences with human rights violation, especially racism and racial discrimination.
And you were involved in it. In which
Yes.
capacity? Can you share that with us?
Yes, I was involved in the capacity of coordinating the participation of civil society. So the delegation of the United Nations, the expert group, was meeting state authorities and also civil society. And my role was to help civil society coordinate the meetings and actually mobilize so that we can have people who can speak up about their experiences.
So then what did you make of the findings that came out of this, and how do you think that it will help your work in tackling racism, for example?
That's a very good question. So first of all, the findings, so far they are preliminary findings. So like you, it was this afternoon that we learned about the findings, the first findings of the mission, and we're still waiting for the final report to come to September this year. But the findings for us are very far-reaching because it's the first time really that we have such an extensive analysis of the situation of people of African descent in Germany. And for us, it's a very strong tool which we can now use to further promote human rights of African descent people in Germany.
So let's talk about that promotion of human rights. What do you think needs to be done?
We have a lot to be done here. So first of all, it starts with creating an understanding of what racism actually is. So in Germany, we still have the issue that we can talk about right-wing extremism, we can talk about left-wing extremism, but actually like the racism faced by minorities, ethnic minorities, is very left out. Racial profiling is a big issue. We had recently, start of this year, the incidents in Cologne, for example, where people were searched for no reason at all other than we have experiences that these particular groups do particular things. And the United Nations expert group says this is unlawful. We cannot do this, things like that. So we have to actually talk about the abuses being done by people and stop it.
And that sort of unconscious bias that you're referring to here, you know, that's something that many people might say is really deeply ingrained. Mm-hmm. What sort of challenges do you see with tackling that, for example? And do you have maybe some ideas in that respect? Yes,
I think the main challenge you see here is that some might talk about racial bias, some might talk about one-to-one cases, but the fact-finding missions show that we have an issue of structural racism. Actually. So it's not just an issue of one policeman or one institution. If there is a particular mentality which is not intercultural, which is not open, actually, it limits people to enter these institutions. At the same time, it reproduces this kind of behavior. Now, the issue we had, for example, with some incidences in Germany is that when police, for example, is being discriminatory, that they are not being tackled, the issues, right? We cannot, it's not registered, and these officers can walk out without anything happening to them, with any charges, right? So this is like what the expert group has called impunity, and it's a real issue for us.
So perhaps a potential solution there is, you know, more consequences, for example, when things like this happen. How about also things like quotas for businesses and certain institutions? I mean, that tends to be a pretty controversial topip. Where would you weigh in on that?
The working group also suggested to look into the issue of quotas because we have an underrepresentation of people of African descent everywhere in public life, be it in public institutions, be it in private companies, be it in higher education, in board management, so we are underrepresented. And there comes in the issue of affirmative measures, of course. So quotas should be looked in, but it's still a long way to go.
Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic because this fact-finding mission now gives us a tool to work on, and we really hope that the government and state authorities will welcome the recommendations.
Okay, we thank you very much for sharing your insights.
Thank you very
you worked,
much.
as we mentioned, on this week-long fact-finding mission from the United Nations. They were looking at racism here in Germany. Yes. Elisabeth Kaneza.
Thank you very much.